Hello! How to survive the 2120 pandemic. Now, I'm doing this for my homeboys traveling to the year, specifically 2120 AD. Okay? That year, had a pandemic. Now, I can't tell you basically because, it's a special type of canon event, and if I ever spoil it, basically, you know what happens. You know what happens if I make a specific type of canon event like this. But it's going to be a disease of some kind, and, well, you'll see. All I have to do is just say, you will be surprised. Even if you think it's a certain way, even if you know what it is, you will still be surprised of what it actually is, You'll still be surprised of the real thing. For those homies in 2120, not 2020. But, what 2120 can learn from 2020 when it comes to pandemics. Okay? First of all, the masks were really harsh. Okay? The government was really harsh. They said you had to have these vaccines and do these things and stay in this way and do this kind of stuff or whatever, Like they were kind of being strict, they were going kind of totalitarian mode, It was like, do this now or die, but you wouldn't die if you didn't do it, But, like, in some places, you actually would die, but because people didn't know, you were most likely not going to die at the time, they stayed in their pandemic places. They stayed in their pods, so to speak. They made their houses their pods. And culture was kind of already shifting at that time, but the pandemic changed and shifted the culture so much so, as you guys historically know. I posted this in 2026, which did kind of affect the 2044 election, but that's a story for another time, But anyway, you specifically watching this video may be thinking, how did he predict this? How did he know that there was a pandemic? Simple. It's basic math. Basic math. You ever heard of it? You ever needed it? There was a lot of people that were stuck and were really becoming chronically online. Now, it didn't fully shift quite yet because everybody was going through the pandemic. But once the pandemic was over, chronically onlineness really kicked in. And so now people are still blaming COVID for their problems. Yeah, that would make sense like 4 years ago, but it's not 4 years ago, okay? It would have made sense in 2024 and 2025 maybe, but 2026 onward, yeah, no, you shouldn't really be blaming pandemic, outside there. We're still in the post-pandemic era, don't get me wrong, time of recording. We are still in the post-pandemic era. But we are out of the first wave of it. That's the problem. And people are still very, very chronically online from this. And I don't know what your pandemic specifically brought to it, because obviously I'm stuck in my, recording, time of recording. But you are living in, that year. So there's that as well. Anyway, it's a thing. There was a lot of problems. People were doing like social distancing stuff. They were being like social outcasts. They were basically ruining their lives over a disease. And then, when you finally did get over the disease, you had a bunch of people that were like, oh no, you need to comply with what I do or whatever. And then it got over with. But it still sticks around, It still comes around, still goes around. That kind of thing. But your pandemic, don't let it be another 2020, okay? It didn't just ruin my life or maybe one of your older relatives' life. It didn't just ruin theirs, but it ruined basically any country that did the lockdown, Because they were trying to shame you. They were trying to say, oh, it wasn't grown in a lab, it was just a bat or whatever. But it was in a lab, And it was around 2016 that they really let that out. And it got worse and worse and worse until 2017, 2018, they had to finally acknowledge the disease was affecting humans. And then it got completely bad in 2019 for China. And the reason why I say China is because China, throughout those years, was the main reason why the rest of the world had a pandemic, in the sense of it spreaded the disease. And because of this, it freaked people out. And it got bigger and bigger and bigger. And during this time, the U.S. election was going on. And then eventually, because it was, Trump's first term, he was going out. And then Joe Biden got elected into president. And then, he went on to go his first and only term. That was a crazy time. But yeah, that's basically what that was. And that's what you had, And let's just say during 2020, some things did not age or go so well, as you guys know, and some things were not great. It might sound nostalgic. It might sound, like something you would really want to live under. But if you know anything about 2020, you would know that realistically speaking, it is not a year you would want to live in. Now, don't get me wrong. I had a good year for me personally. But for the majority, for I want to say 90% of people, they were just outright fucking crashing out. They were just, losing their minds, And for about the other 10%, they were either sometimes crashing out, and for the 1% like me, either rarely, barely, or not really crashing out, having a chillax, having a good time. But it was so rare that I was just one of those people that just so happened to have it. But it was extremely rare, so most people were just freaking out over toilet paper. There was bullshit going on. Stores were always out of stock. Stores were always locked the fuck up too. And it was just for a lot of people, with the exception of me and a few other people that I know personally, most people, even for the rich, even for the billionaire, trillionaire rich at the time, it was kind of hell for them, because it just stunk so bad. And then 2021 happened, and then 2022, 2023, and 2024, and then obviously 2025, and so far, time of recording, 2026. And, well, it's getting a doozy, okay? All I'm saying is, when it comes to the bad stuff, Like, there was many good things, like, introducing vaccines early on, that kind of thing within that year. But even then, it took them a long time to really get on it. But the thing is that they came off as really preachy, and they didn't really promote the vaccine pretty well, so people became very anti-vaccine because of people like that. So that was not good. Okay, you made a lot of failures. A lot of failures happened that year. There was a lot of upsets. There was a lot of things going on. But anyway, I am going to wrap this video up. End this video, is what I mean to say. But before I go, all I really have to say is don't let 2120 be another 2020. Alright, bye!